Praise the Lord. Hope you all are fine. Sorry for the delay because I should have been online on YouTube a week ago, but because of the vastness of this material, as you will see today, it took me extra time to consolidate and to compile this material in one place. So it was a bit difficult, but by the grace of God, finally I was able to do it. So let's start. But before we start, I think I want to make this very clear. This is the third video of the series and the last one. I'll try to complete this today, but if not, then I'll have to make another video of this incomplete video. So if you have not watched the previous videos, please go and watch. Now my whole argument goes on like this, that the Islam depends on three things. It depends on the place where it all started, and the man named Muhammad who started, and the book what he started. So that is Quran. So in the two previous videos I have encountered very in-depth analysis of two things. First is that the place Mecca was not the place from which the Islam originated, and the second is that it could have been somebody else, not Muhammad, who started this religion. So today, this is the third of the series and the last one. I'll try my best to complete this today. So we'll analyze about the Quran. Now, before we start, I think I want to make this very clear. This material which I am giving you right now, for some weeks now, it is the latest material. Now, this is not my research. I want to make this very clear. This is the research of so many people from Europe, from England, from America, and from other countries as well, who are working very hard to compile this material. So there are a lot of different people of different languages, even I would say, who are doing this research, and I'm just the one who is presenting them. So this is not my material. I would say this is what my teacher has taught me and is giving me the insights about this, and also as colleagues and my friends who are doing in-depth analysis of this. So, but because I've been studying Islam for the last 10 years, so by the grace of God, I was able to get hold on this material. So I just keep a very keen eye on these things, on this material. So you'll not find it anywhere else. Now there were some suggestions regarding that, brother, why don't you make some basic videos like the concept of God in Islam and Christianity, like Tawheed, the concept of Tawheed and Quran, or the concept of Trinity in the Bible. Now these are basic. I think these are basic videos about what the concept of God is in the Quran, what is the concept of God in the Bible, and to compare it. So I think a lot of people have already made videos regarding this. There's a good bunch of literature is already presented there, the bookshelves and the bookshops. You can go and you can read them. So I don't want to go to something which is already been dealt in depth. So I want to come and present something which is very new for us as a Christian in India. So we are not that much aware about what is happening in the world about regarding this. Now, it is important to understand that Muslims all over the world have criticized Bible very heavily. So what they said, that Bible is full of errors, Bible has so many manuscripts, not one manuscript matches with the other. Now if you are not deeply rooted in the Word of God, that will trouble you. But if you have done your in-depth analysis on this subject, I think you can easily answer these things. So there's a video even in my playlist. You can go and watch Know Your Bible. So if you are interested in knowing the Bible textually, to analyze it, about the manuscript, how we got our English Bibles as well as Hindi Bible, and what is the basis for biblical translation, it is already there you can watch it. So we'll apply that same criteria what they have applied to us on our Bible. We will apply to their Quran as well. Now, why I'm saying that this is recent material, because earlier we believed whatever they have said. We believed what they said, that the Quran has been unchanged. We'll see that, we'll analyze that. It was said that Quran was uncreated. Now again we will see that, we will analyze that. It was said that Quran was sent to original Quran by compiled by Quran original Quran compiled by Uthman in his time in 652 AD, was sent to different cities. So whatever was presented to us through the traditions, we have not questioned it through the century. I would not say through the centuries, but for the last 50 years, like 5 decades, debates between Christians and Muslims have happened on the basis of what the Muslims have presented. So, but now, as the book of Daniel predicted that the knowledge will increase in the last days, so I think the knowledge of God has also increased for us as a student of the Word of God to give to prepare ourselves to give reason for our hope. So this is what I'm doing in this session. Let's start. So it was the claim of Muslims is that the Quran is uncreated and exists eternally on the clay tablets, and you can find that in Surah 85 verse 22, where it is written that Quran is uncreated. So again, it is a whole discussion of going back. If Allah is uncreated, how can Quran be uncreated? There has to be a time when both of them, they cannot coexist together. Again, this is something which will make Muslims very uncomfortable. Second claim which Muslims make is that the Quran was sent down to Muhammad between 610 to 632 AD. So in a period of 22 years, I think so. This is a traditional claim. Third claim is that the Quran the Quran was completed by Uthman in 652 AD. So according to the historical tradition and what Muslims believe today, that the Quran which they have today, the Hafs Quran, is the original or the exact replica what was compiled by Caliph Uthman, the third Caliph Uthman, in 652 AD. Okay, this is a claim. Again, we will counter that. Fourth claim is that the Quran is unchanged in last 1400 years. Again, you might have heard this a lot of times, and if you have a Muslim friend, he would have said it in some way or the other, that the Quran is unchanged. Not even a dot or a letter has been changed. We will see that in this session, whether it is right or not. So now what we'll see that the Quranic manuscript, they don't have it from 652 AD. We'll see that. We'll analyze that. They don't have a complete Quran earlier also, which now they feel that they have the complete Quran, but we'll see that. And we'll also encounter the claim that what they say, that it is exactly unchanged from the time Uthman compiled the Quran. From that day onward, or the year onwards till now, Quran is completely unchanged. We'll see that whether it is right or not. We are going to encounter those claims, what they make regarding the Hafs Quran. Now there are more than 13 areas which we need to look the modern day Hafs Quran, which Muslims in India have. In fact, apart from North Africa and some countries, the dominant Quran which people read today is, in fact, I'm talking about this one, this Quran, the Quran, yeah. So this is the Hafs Quran, and you will see Muslims reading it, whether it is in Hindi, whether it is in Arabic, or an English translation of it. You'll find that is in that comes from the Hafs Quran. So what we'll see, what we will investigate, point number one, what we will see the claims made by the Muslim clergy or the Muslim leaders, and then we'll see that what the Muslim scholars have to say about these claims. Then we'll see historical anachronisms. I will explain that in a moment. Then we'll look source criticism. Then we'll go to the two compilations of the Quran. Remember, first it was compiled in the time of Abu Bakr, then in 632, and then in 652 AD by Caliph Uthman. Then we'll see the 30 late diacritical marks, which means different Arabic Qurans, which we are going to see. That is why I'm saying that this material is very new, very damaging to the Islam. Then we'll see the 6 earliest Quranic manuscripts. Now, if you don't know about manuscripts, about biblical manuscripts, you can go and watch the video which I made at, I think, year and a half ago. You can watch it. But in this video, we'll see the manuscripts which Quran have. Do they have a Quran from the time of dating from the time of Caliph Uthman in 652 AD? We'll see that. We'll see the 2 layers of Sana palimpsest. Palimpsest means the parchment of the Quranic manuscript, which is in Sana, Yemen, modern day Yemen. Then we'll see some carbon dating, some 4000 early consonantal variants. We'll see. Then we'll see 1924 Hafs canonized text, which today people, which just I've showed you. This is basically Hafs Quran. It was canonized in 1924 in Egypt, Cairo. Then we'll see little bit of new Aramaic proto-Quran research. If I'll get the time, then I'll touch on that, because it will be a very long video. So let's start. Now, Fatehullah Gulen, influential Turkish cult leader, and he says that the Quran text is entirely reliable. It has not been altered, edited, or tampered with since it was revealed. All Muslims know only one Quran perfectly preserved in its original words since the Prophet's death, when the revelation ended. This he wrote in his first volume in Questions and Answer About Islam, Volume 1. So he believes that, and you might have heard this phrase, that it is unchanged, not even a word or letter has been changed. So this is what the claim of Fatehullah Gulen. Now, Suzanne Hanif, she's also proactive Islamist. She says that the Holy Quran is the only divinely revealed scripture in the history of mankind which has been preserved to the present time in its exact original form. This she made a comment in her book, What Everyone Should Know About Islam and Muslims, in 1979, and this is on page number 18 and 19. Now, Abdullah Yusuf Ali, this is the translation of Abdullah Yusuf Ali. Okay, this is the translation of this man, Abdullah Yusuf Ali, and his quote I'm quoting. He says that not a single letter has changed. So well has it been preserved, both in memory and in writing, that the Arabic text we have today is identical to the text as it was revealed to the Prophet. Not even a single letter has yielded to the corruption during the passage of centuries. So Abdullah Yusuf Ali, who translated the Quran in English, he believes that not even a letter has been changed. Now you can see the complexity of their arguments. He's one of the popular translators of the Quran, as I've mentioned. Now, influential Pakistani theologian, his name is Maulvi Muhammad Ali. Basically, now he died. He says the Quran is one, and no copy differing in even a diacritical point is met with. There are always have been contending sects, but the same Quran is in the possession of one and all. A manuscript which the slightest variation in the text is unknown. So now he lived in 1921. Okay, so basically he's from Pakistan. So he mentioned in 1921 that not even a slightest variation in any manuscript has been ever found. But I don't know in 1921 which manuscript he was quoting it. Only 6 manuscripts you have today. So, but maybe whatever he received from the tradition, basically he didn't challenge it, and so far we see most of the Muslims are doing that. Okay, so Dr. Shabir Ali is one of the most prominent Islamic personalities and debaters uh, in Muslim faith. What he has to say is that what is important to notice is that throughout the ages of Muslim history, the Muslims have not quarreled over what is the text of the Quran, because the text was known through the memory work and through the written materials handed down right from the time of the Prophet Muhammad. As I said, the two copies that were made 1400 years ago, one which is in Tashkent, Russia. Basically, Tashkent is in Uzbekistan, but he was wrong in his quotation. For example, has been demonstrated by Ahmed von Denver in his book Ulum al-Quran to be an early copy from that time, and we find no difference from that copy to what we are reading today. So he is one of the prominent Muslim scholars, and he said that Muslims have not quarreled about the text. It is same. It is 1400 years ago. Now further he says, during his debate with Tony Costa, he said, we have a copy of Quran dating from 790 AD in the British Museum that is known as the Mile Codex. We'll talk about this. Folks, this is the exact words of Dr. Shabir Ali. He said, folks, that's 1300 years ago, and we can compare that with what we are reading today, and we find them to be exactly identical. So he said that the Mile Quran, it is interesting that during his debate he mentioned the Mile Quran, and he said that belongs to 790 AD. That means and what we read in the Mile Quran is exactly the same today what we read. So we have a proof, but we'll see that. Now Dr. Yasser Qadi, an influential American Islamic scholar, what he has to say. He goes further above this, and he says, not a word or nor a letter has changed. Uthman standardized the copies of the Quran, and from his time up until our time, there hasn't even been two copies of the Quran that are different, even one letter or one word. So he is saying that not even there are no two manuscripts in which there is a difference in one word or a letter. So he believes all the manuscripts are the same. Further, he says that the Quran is the most protected of all scriptures, and God has protected his Quran from any kind of alteration, deviation, miswriting, because he says he's going to protect it. So basically, he's making argument that Quran itself claims that God will preserve it from the corruption, and we'll see that all Qurans, even up to our time, conform letter for letter, word for word with the Uthman Mushaf. To this day, there is no different version of the Quran. There is but one Quran. So he believes that the Quran has always been one. There are even no two manuscripts which differ with word or a letter. Okay. Now, why they are saying this? Again, the question comes in that why Muslims are making this claim, and they make this criteria applicable to our Bible. Let's see. Because the Quran makes these claims. If you read Surah 85 verse 21 to 22, it says that this is a glorious Quran inscribed and preserved tablet. So from this comes the argument of Tawheed, about the concept of God, and you also talk about the uncreated nature of Quran. And this verse says that the Quran, before coming down via Jibreel to Muhammad, it was even today they believe that there are clay tablets in heaven which have the original Quran, what they have today as a replica in their books. In Surah 10 verse 15 says, bring us a Quran other than this, or change it. Say, it is not for me to change it on my own accord. Surah 18:27 says, means the claim is that it cannot be changed. Surah 18 verse 27 says, and recite what has been revealed to you of the book of your Lord, none can change his words. So this is the claim made by Quran itself, that nobody can change the words of Quran, because this is a promise made by God in the Quran. Further, if you read Surah 15 verse 9, it says, verily verily we, it is we who have sent down the Quran, surely we will guard it. We means Allah is saying in a more prestigious form, and it says that we will guard it. So Quran is making a case for itself that that God will himself guard it from the corruption. So the conclusion is, if you see what they are saying is that the Quran, what we have today, has not been changed even one iota, means diacritical mark, since its inception 1400 years ago. That the Quran, what we have today, is exactly the same as that which was on the preserved tablets in heaven. Every word, even every letter is the same. This is what the conclusion of what I've just mentioned it. Further, the claim is that our Quran parallels in every detail that which was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad and was written down completely by Uthman in 652 AD. So they believe again that nothing has been changed, and this is exactly Quran, what was revealed to Muhammad and what was compiled by Abu Bakr or Uthman in 652 AD. But is that what the earliest Muslim scholars believe? Now we'll see that whatever I have just mentioned, this is argument made by the modern scholars or the theologians. But we will see, and we have also looked what the Quran has to say about itself. So two things I have already mentioned: what the Quran has to say about itself, and also what the modern scholars have to say about the record of Quran. But now we'll see what the earliest authors or the Muslim scholars or theologians had to say regarding this, okay, about these claims. Now, it is mentioned, I'm quoting it from As-Sayyuti, a Muslim scholar, a theologian. He writes in 1500 AD, okay. I'll go back further also. In his work called Al-Iqtan fil Ulim al-Quran, page number 524. And he said that some of the verses which was revealed now has been disappeared. Now I'm quoting it, what he said: let none of you say I have acquired the whole of the Quran. How does he know what all of it is when much of the Quran has disappeared? Rather, let him say I have acquired what has survived. So he is making the argument that nobody should say that he has received or memorized the whole of the Quran, whereas much of the Quran was disappeared. So how you can say that you have the complete Quran? So this, he is writing in 1500, long before these modern day scholars. Now further, I'm quoting it from Sunnah Abu Dawud. This is one of the most famous hadith writers among the Muslims. And now he says that some of the verses were lost. I'm quoting it from what he said. Many of the passages of the Quran that were sent down were known by those who died in the day of Yamama, but they were not known by those who survived them, nor were they written down, nor had Abu Bakr, Umar or Uthman collected the Quran, nor were they found with even one person after them. So he is making the claim that in 632 AD there was a battle of Yamama, in which Abu Bakr thought that if he will send some best of the reciters of the Quran, if they will be put forward, so because they know the Quran better, nothing can harm them. So what he did, that he put them in the first row where the battle was fierce, and on the contrary, they were brutally killed. But they were, remember, they were best of the reciters and memorizers of the Quran. So now Ibn Abi Dawud is saying that some of the verses which only those people remembered or memorized, we don't have. So this is Sunnah Abu Dawud. Now Sahih Muslim, again one of the very strong hadith tradition comes from this person. His name is Sahih Muslim, and he writes in 875 AD. Now remember, 875 AD, way back 11 or 1200 centuries before today. He writes in his work in volume 2, hadith number 2286, page number 501. Page number can be different from different publications. but this is exactly what he has said, and I'm quoting it. We used to recite a surah which resembled in length and severity to Surah Barat. There's a chapter in Quran known as Surah Barat. I have, however, forgotten it, with the exception of this, which I remember out of it. If there were two valleys full of riches for the son of Adam, he would long for the third valley, and nothing would fill the stomach of the son of Adam but dust. So he said that he remembered that this surah was there in the original Quran, some kind of a surah, which was in severity, in length, was similar to Surah Barat, and he remembered a verse out of it, and he said that this was not in the Quran. So today in the modern day Hafs Quran, we don't find this verse of Adam and the valley and all that stuff. We don't find it in the modern day Quran. Again, very early. Again, some of the verses were cancelled. This I'm quoting from Sahih al-Bukhari, who lived in 870 AD. His work is volume 5, hadith number 416, page number 288. So he said, and I'm quoting, we used to read a verse of the Quran revealed in their connection, but later the verse was cancelled. It was conveyed to our people on our behalf the information that we have met our Lord, and He is pleased with us and has made us pleased. So he said that we used to read a verse in the Quran which was later cancelled. So means that verse was cancelled. It was conveyed to our people on behalf of the information. So, but later on that verse came in the codex of the Quran. So there are some verses which were cancelled also. Now some of the verses went missing, and I'm quoting it from Sahih al-Bukhari, from 870 AD, volume 8, hadith number 817, page number 539. He said, Allah sent Muhammad with the truth and revealed the holy book to him, and among what Allah revealed was the verse of Razm, means stoning of married couple if they are found doing adultery. And we did recite this verse and understood and memorized it. Allah's apostle did carry out the punishment of stoning. Punishment of stoning means Razm. So did we after him. I am afraid that after a long time has passed, somebody will say, by Allah, we do not find the verse of Razm in Allah's book, and thus they will go astray by leaving on an obligation which Allah has revealed. So he believed that there was a verse of Razm in the Quran, but today what we have in the modern day Hafs Quran, we don't find the Razm verse, the verse of stoning, we don't find in the modern day Quran. Now some verses were overlooked. I'm just, because this is going to be a very huge material, I'm just cutting it down and making it short. Some verses were changed. This I'm quoting it from Mutawata Imam Malik, who lived in 795 AD, and he writes in page number 64, and he said, Abu Yunus, freedman of Aisha, mothers of believers, reported, Aisha ordered me to transcribe the Holy Quran and asked me to let her know when I should arrive at the verse. When I arrived at the verse, I informed her, and she ordered, write it in this way, means certain pronunciation she made it. She added that she had heard it from the Apostle of Allah, may peace be upon him. So some of the verses, this writer is saying that some of the verses which was recited earlier in some form, in some pronunciation, but Aisha later corrected the people who were reciting it in a wrong way, so it was changed. Now some of the verses were modified. Altogether, I'm quoting it from Ibn Abi Dawud, again one of the very prominent Hadith scholars. He writes in his Kitab al-Mashif, page number 117, he says, altogether Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf made 11 modifications in the reading of the Uthmanic text. So he said that even in the Uthmanic text, Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf made 11 modifications. Now, what were those modifications? In Al-Baqarah, Surah 2, verse 259, he basically mentions the verse. It originally read Lam Yata Sana Mandur, but it was altered to lam yatasana. In Al-Ma'idah, Surah 5, verse 48, it read Sha'yatun wa minhajjun, but it was later altered to Shir'at wa minhajjun. So basically, Ibn Abi Dawud is giving uh, a comparison what modifications Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf made of the Quranic Uthmanic recension. Now, I mean, okay, some verses were eaten by sheep. This is a very famous one. It was recorded in Sunnah Ibn Majah, page number 1277. It was narrated that Aisha said that verse of the stoning and of breastfeeding an adult 10 times was revealed, and the paper was with me under my pillow. When the Messenger of Allah died, we were preoccupied with his death, and a tame sheep came and ate it. So that means that the verses which Aisha no, means verse of stoning and of breastfeeding, which Aisha wrote it on paper, or she had it on paper. She kept it under pillow, but she was preoccupied because Muhammad died in 632 AD. So she was preoccupied with things, but certainly a sheep or a goat ate it. So this was the case. Now we have seen that what the Muslim scholars of today, or the Quran itself, makes the claim for itself, but what the earlier writers starting from 870 or 830 AD, what they had to say, and we see that there are two contrary things. Some of the verses were cancelled, changed, substituted, altered, modified, so on and on. So if it is Allah's word, if it is God's word, as promised by Allah that He will guard it, He will protect it, so how these modifications, alterations, changes have been made? Okay, so we see that it has disappeared, forgotten, cancelled, missing, overlooked, lost, so on and on. Now, coming back to the very important section of this video, and that is called historical anachronism. Now we'll see Quran from different angles. In the first section, we have just looked the Quran from the different perspective, what the earliest sources had to say about Islam, about Quran. Now we'll see some more arguments, how we can encounter them. Another one is the historical anachronism. Now, what is historical anachronism? Now, suppose if I give you a brief definition, is like something is written down in history which does not belong to that period. That is called historical anachronism. For example, if I say that Gandhi ji sent a text message to so and so political leader, or Gandhi ji sent a WhatsApp message to that so and so leader. So that is a historical anachronism. Why? Because in the time of Gandhi ji, we know that WhatsApp was not there. Even in the time of Gandhi ji, cell phones and the text were hard to find. How you can say that it existed in that time? So that is a historical anachronism. Whoever wrote it has really misguided us by giving the information. I'm just giving an example. Whoever has written down this has given us a bad piece of information, I would say. That is known as historical anachronism, and we can see that from the timeline, from the historical perspective, that this thing doesn't belong to that period. Okay, now Quran introduces a Samaritan too early. Now we all know how the Samaritan people came into being after when kingdom was divided from the time of Rehoboam. It was united in the time of Solomon, but when his son came Rehoboam, the kingdom was divided into Israel and Judah. And we all know that in 722 BC, the northern kingdom, the Israelites fell, and they were laid down by and seized by Assyrians in 722 AD by Sargon II. But the interesting thing is that Quran mentions in Surah 20 verse 85 and 87, and also verses 95 and 97, where Quran mentions that Allah said, But indeed we have tried your people after you departed, and the Samri has led them astray. So Moses returned to his people angry and grieved. Moses said, and what is your case, O Samri? Now the problem is in the text is that the Quran mentioned in these verses uh, about Pharaoh, about Moses. Okay, that's fine. Pharaoh existed in the time of Moses, but it talks about that Moses is talking about Samri or Samaritans. Now we know that it cannot be uh, before 722 BC. So Moses was living in, according to the traditional date, he was living 1400 years in 1400 years BC. So how did Moses can talk to Samaritan, even though there was nothing like Samaritans at that time? So that is an historical anachronism. That means that somebody is getting information from somewhere else, which is not reliable. Okay, the Samaritans were created after the fall of the northern kingdom of Israel by Sargon II. He was a king of Assyria at that time in 722 BC. Okay, in the previous sessions we have looked about the Qiblas and the mosque, about the place Al-Mecca. In Surah 17 verse 1 it says that glorified is he who took his slave for a journey by night from Al-Masjid Al-Haram, that is Mecca, to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, that is Jerusalem, known as Miraj, in 621 AD. So if you have seen the previous videos, I have mentioned about this Miraj on a horse called Buraq. So Muhammad traveled from Makkah, Masjid al-Haram to Masjid al-Aqsa, that is in Jerusalem. But we know, so the Quran places this Miraj in 621 AD, but it also places the mosque of Masjid al-Aqsa in 621 AD. So if you go today to Israel, you will see the Dome of the Rock, and after that you will see in line you will see another mosque that is known as the Al-Aqsa. But the problem is that the Dome of the Rock was built in 691 AD by Abdul al-Malik, and Masjid Al-Aqsa, which the Quran talks about in Surah 17 verse 1, was created in 710 AD. So Miraj was done in 621 AD. How 621 AD? So how can there be there was Masjid Al-Aqsa when it was created in the time of Abdul al-Malik in 710? So it cannot be the Jewish temple of even Jewish temple was not there. I have already made a very long video regarding in-depth analysis of third temple, and I have given the historical background of first, second, and third centuries onwards. So it was just even Jewish temple was not there. Okay. The Quran attributes the crucifixions too early. Now this is very important. It says in Surah 7 verse 120 to 124, it says, Pharaoh said to sorcerers at the time of Moses, means remember the timeline of Moses, it was 1400 years BC. Indeed, this is a conspiracy which you have conspired in the city to expel therefrom its people. But you are going to know, I will surely cut off your hands and your feet on opposite sides. Then I will surely crucify you all. So he is saying that Moses means Quran is saying that he's talking to Moses and he's saying that he was threatening them, I will crucify you all. How can he say that he can crucify them all? Crucifixion was not invented by then. So how can Moses was threatened by Pharaoh to be crucified along with the people? It's a historical anachronism. Surah 20 verse 71 said, Pharaoh said to the magicians at the time of Moses, you believed him before I gave you permission. Indeed, he is your leader. Who has taught you magic? So I will surely cut off your hands and feet on opposite sides, and I will crucify you on the trunks of palm trees. And you will surely know which of us is more severe in punishment and more enduring. So again, threatening threat by Pharaoh, and he said that I will crucify you. Again, how can we? There are some other verses as well, but I don't want to go in that. So Moses' Pharaoh lived in 447 BC. So crucifixions were not even used in Egypt. There is no archaeological evidences or excavation or any piece of literature which talks about that crucifixion was there in the time of Moses or in Egypt at that time. So it's a historical anachronism. This was not written down as an eyewitness account. They were first instituted 500 BC. So first time when the crucifixion was invented, it was 500 BC. Remember the book of Esther? Thus the Quran's crucifixion are in the wrong place, and it's too early. It gives the evidence of crucifixion too early. So that doesn't belong. It's like same like WhatsApp example which I give you. Now one thing which needs to be understand here, that one thing which they should have got it right is the crucifixion, but they've got it wrong. So they deny crucifixion. So Quran says in Surah 4 verse 157, and they did not kill him, nor did they crucify him. It's talking about Jesus, the son of Mary. But if you see the historical record, now I'll make a separate video regarding the historicity of Jesus about his crucifixion. But for a brief moment, I would just comment on that. The book which comes 700 years after Jesus Christ talks and says on no basis that Jesus was not crucified. But if you see the historical record about just non-Christian writers, just if you don't want to believe the Bible, fine. If you don't want to take the record of the Bible, it's fine. But what about the historical record given by other people, like Thales, the Greek historian? He writes in his Samaritan history about the crucifixion of Jesus. His timeline is 52 AD. The Philogon, again a Greek and a Roman writer, lived in the 1st century Common Era. He talks about the crucifixion. Lucian, again a Greek satirist of his time, 2nd century Common Era. He talks about crucifixion. Again, Mara ben Serapian's letter to Pagan. He writes in 73 AD. He talks about crucifixion. Josephus, a very famous one, Jewish antiquities, he writes in AD 37 to 90. He talks about crucifixion of Christus, Jesus. Tacitus, a Roman historian, in 110 AD, he talks about crucifixion. So Greek and Roman historians from 1st century, 2nd century all agree that Jesus was on the cross. But a book comes after 700 years and says that no, he was not crucified. Now, a very important one. We know about Miriam. She was the sister of Aaron and Moses. Now, they've got the wrong Mary. In Surah 19 verse 28, it says, "O Mary, you have certainly done a thing unprecedented, O sister of Aaron." Now, Quran says that Mary was the sister of Aaron. But we know that Mary was not the sister of Aaron. The sister of Aaron was Miriam. Again it says in Surah 66 verse 12, "And Maryam, the daughter of Imran, who guarded her chastity." Now again this verse describes that Imran was the daughter of Mary. No, Heli was the father of Maryam. Okay, Surah 20 verse 30, Aaron, my brother. Okay, so Miriam is the sister of Aaron and Moses. We all know about from the Bible. All three are the children of Amram. This you can read in Exodus 6 verse 20. So in my view, when Quran says in Surah 66 verse 12, and Maryam, the daughter of Imran, I think it should have somebody who was writing it wanted to say that Miriam, the daughter of Amram, but somehow it was clobbered and said Maryam, the daughter of Imran. And Aaron, Moses, and Miriam, all three were the children of Amram, not Imran. Okay, and in the Luke Gospel we read that the father of Mary is not Amran but Heli. This you can read in Luke chapter 3 verse 23. Okay, and she lived 1400 years after Aaron and Moses, during the time of Jesus, not in the time of, if it is the same Maryam, it was not. Okay, basically it's a confusion between Mary and Miriam, or you can understand. Okay, now I have talked about Qibla. You can see whole lot of discussion I have already done this in the previous two videos. Okay, it confuses the Kaaba. Okay, in Surah you can read that in Surah 5 verse 97, Surah 2 verse 125, Surah 3 verse 96 and 97, Surah 14 verse 37, and Surah 22 verse 26 and 27. All assume that Abraham and Ishmael built Kaaba. Kaaba is a black stone in which every Muslim needs to pray in the direction of that Kaaba in Mecca. However, the historical record has that Abraham lived in Canaan. There is no historical document which said that Abraham ever lived in Mecca or Medina apart from Canaan. Kissing the black stone was a Nabatean practice before Muhammad and 600 miles further north. If you have seen the previous videos, I have mentioned that this is all a Nabatean religion. This practice pre-existed Moses kissing of the black stone, circumambulating several times, all came from Nabatea. So Abraham did this and his son Ishmael did it. We don't find that any historical document. This is all from pagan sources. Again, this is a historical anachronism, but Quran mentions it. It confuses the Pharaoh, the Tower of Babel, and Haman. Haman, we all know Haman of the book of Esther. It says in Surah 28 verse 38, and Pharaoh said, O eminent ones, I have not known you to have a god other than me. So kindle for me, O Haman, a fire upon the clay and make me a tower. Now Pharaoh said to Haman, make me a tower. Again, three different things. Pharaoh lived in 1400 BC. Haman lived 500 BC, let's say. And tower, Haman was not a builder of tower. He was Nimrod, the first world dictator who built the Tower of Babel. Again, historical anachronism. Surah verse 40 verse 36 and 7 says, and Pharaoh said, O Haman, construct for me a tower that I might reach the ways into heaven, so that I may look at the deity of Moses, but indeed I think he is a liar. So again, Pharaoh is talking to Haman. Again, it's a historical anachronism. Egypt never built any towers. You can see the Egyptians archaeological sites. They have never built towers. But again, Quran mentions that Egyptians or Egyptian pharaoh were building towers. They built pyramids, yes, and these were the astrological temples. Okay, Genesis 11 verse 1 to 9 says, tower is in Chaldea or southern Iraq. It was when Nimrod built the Tower of Babel, it was in Chaldea, and that was southern Iraq, not the Egypt. And Haman was not an Egyptian to build, but a Persian basically. Esther 3 verse 1 talks about Haman. Okay, so Pharaoh lived in 1500 BC or 1400 BC, and Haman lived in 510 BC. Never met each other. Okay, now very interesting one. It refers to futuristic coins as dirham. Too early. Surah 12 verse 20 says, a few dirhams counted out, the coins used to buy Joseph. So same story which you will read in the Bible, that Joseph was sold by his brothers to Ishmaelites. So same story is given by, in some variants, some little bit of different variants, it is given in the Quran. And it is interesting to see that it said that he was sold for few dirhams. Now interesting thing is, was there a currency of dirham at the time of Joseph? Joseph lived in 1800 in BC, long before Moses, 1400 before Moses. Coins were created in 600 BC by the Lydians. It was Lydians who created the minting of the coins, and that was 600 years BC, 6th century BC. Dirhams were introduced post 661 AD by the Sufyani family and Marwans and all those people, Sufyani people. It the dirham, the coin dirham was minted in after 661 AD. So how could it be possible that Joseph was sold for dirhams? Again, it's historical anachronism. This is very long. It's almost finished now. Now come to source criticism. Now you can see how much long material it is. I wanted to cut it short, but it's just the third part now. We're moving to the fourth part now. Let's see how long I can take it. Okay, source criticism means you are borrowing material from the outside sources into book, and when somebody after some time reading it, he can analyze the material and try to search out what could have been the sources from where that material has been taken. Okay, that is called the source criticism. Now Muslim claim is that the Quran is the eternal word of Allah. Its source comes from the eternal tablet preserved in heaven. So Muslims, before coming to this point, you have to again refresh your memory by understanding that Quran is the eternal word of Allah. It coexisted with Allah in the heavens, in heaven, in eternal clay tablets. It was revealed to correct the errors of the previous revelation. So again, many times you might have heard Muslims saying that Quran is the correction of the corrupt Bible. It completes the Bible. It completes the Torah and Injil and Zabur. Okay. It is the claim that it is unfettered by human intervention. It does not come from man but from God. So they believe that this is a book, divine, comes from divine inspiration, and it's not from somebody else but from God. But if you analyze about these stories about Miriam or like Pharaoh and Haman and all the stories, like from Surah 3 verse 35 to 37 about Mary, Imran, Zachariah, you will see similar kind of a storyline from another document that was proto-evangelion James Lesser, lived in 2nd century Common Era. That means 2nd century AD. Similar, you can read both the documents. You can find that you can analyze from where this material is coming from. Basically, when it mentioned about Imran, mentioned about Miriam, talks about Zachariah, and the different stage conversation. So you read these documents and you find that it might have been taken from there. Again, about you might have heard that in the Quran it is written that baby Jesus is creating birds from the clay by breathing into a clay and making it into a bird. Quran mentions in Surah 3 verse 49, creating birds from a clay. Again, you will find that originally it was written in Thomas' Gospel of the infancy of Jesus Christ, and it was written in the 2nd century AD. So this story about baby Jesus making a bird from the clay comes basically from the infancy Gospel of Jesus Christ, written in 2nd century AD, known as the doubtful, regarded as very pseudo gospel. So that is why it was not accepted. Okay. Again, raising mountains. You will read a lot about raising mountains in the Quran, and you will read that in Surah 7 verse 171. Again, this similar kind of a thing you can find that in the Aboda Sarah documents in 2nd century Common Era. Again, baby Jesus talking from a cradle, means Jesus talking from the cradle. It is mentioned in Quran Surah 19 verse 29 to 33. You will find the source of this document in 2nd century Common Era or 2nd century AD, named the first Gospel of Infancy of Jesus Christ. So this story was taken from there. Jesus talking from his cradle. Surah 21 verse 51 to 71 talks about Abraham destroying the idols in Kaaba in Makkah. So as we have already seen that Abraham never traveled Kaaba, he only lived in Canaan. But from where this information is coming that he lived in Kaaba or Makkah, and he destroyed the idols there. It comes from the Mishnah of Rabbah in 2nd century Common Era. So these borrowings were written in 2nd to 5th centuries. You will see, and the document, the source of this information is coming from 2nd century to 5th century Common Era. Thus, long after the Bible was canonized, suggesting that the creators of the Quran borrowed the wrong material. So, have I argued in the previous videos that this could not be the product of one man, but the product of different personalities. So these might be the documents from where this information was taken down. Okay. Now, where do we find out about the Quran's creation? In Sahih al-Bukhari. Now, Sahih al-Bukhari lived in 870 AD from Bukharistan. Muhammad died in 632 AD, and Quran was compiled by Uthman in 652 AD. If you see the time gap of the Uthmanic Quran and about the information of Quran coming by someone who knows about this, is from Sahih al-Bukhari, who lived in 870 AD. Even he never went to Mecca, and that is 218 to 230 or 40 years after Uthman compiled the Quran. Now, if you read in Sahih al-Bukhari volume 6 hadith number 509, it talks about Abu Bakr and Umar. Abu Bakr and Umar called Zayd bin Thabit, Muhammad's secretary, to collect the Quran because of all those killed at the Battle of Yamama who had memorized it. He at first refuses, saying that the Prophet hadn't even done this, but then relents. He collects it from the palm leaves, white stones, and from men's memories. One verse, Surah 9, verse number 128 to 129, he found with only one man, Ibn Khuzaimah al-Ansari. So this verse was not there, which he found with this one man. The first recension is given to Hafsa, Muhammad's wife, and the daughter of Umar, and she put it under her bed for 20 years. So I have already told you about there was a first recension of the Quran done by Abu Bakr, and he gave the responsibility to Zayd bin Thabit, and when he completed the codex, it was given to Hafsa, the daughter of Umar, and she kept it under her bed for 20 years. And this all information you can get from Sahih al-Bukhari volume 6 509. Okay. Now there are certain questions which need to be asked about this Uthmanic recension of the Quran when he compiled this. Question number 1, concerning the al-Bukhari volume 6 hadith number 509, about Abu Bakr's first compilation of the Quran. Okay, this is question number 1 for the first recension of the Quran at the time of Abu Bakr. Why didn't God choose a language which could accommodate the Quran? Means why God chose a language which was so primitive in its form. It has no diacritical marks, no vowelization. We know that from the history that the vowelization and the diacritical markings came in 8th and 9th century AD. So why God revealed in a language, even though you had Hebrew and Greek and Aramaic at the time, long before in the time of Jesus? So why choose a language which was in primitive form? Why didn't God choose a man who could read and write? Writing down the Quran and preserving it was a primary remit. So why didn't he do it either before he died? So why God chose a man who was illiterate? Even though he was an illiterate man, he had ample time, and he even had Zayd bin Thabit, he was his secretary. So why he never even tried to learn the language? Why he always remained? And you will see a lot of Muslims claims about scientific miracles and all that stuff in the Quran. Okay, I'll make a separate video regarding that. Compilation question number 2, concerning Sahih al-Bukhari volume 6 509, and this is about first compilation of the Quran. Why didn't Muhammad learn to read and write? There are only 28 Arabic letters, and he had 22 years to learn this language, because the Quran came from 610 to 632 AD. Okay, and as I mentioned you, Zayd bin Thabit even never tried to teach him. Another question is, why didn't Abu Bakr make copies and disperse them to 5 to 9 provinces in 634 AD as Uthman did later on? So we know that in 652 AD, Uthman, when he made an official copy and what the other copies, he sent some of the traditions say that he sent it to 5 different provinces, and some of the traditions say that he sent it to 9 different provinces, like Basra, Kufa, Damascus, Jerusalem, Cairo, Alexandria, Aden, Herat, and Nisapur, all the part of the Central Asia. So if it was done in 652 AD, why it was not done in the first compilation of the Quran? Why he just ordered Hafsa to keep her under her bed? Why the copies were not sent to different provinces at that time? Compilation question number 3. Again regarding the first compilation, about same volume 6509. Muslims say that 1000 people died at Yamama, though the tradition tells us that only 70 Hafiz is the one who recite the Quran, who memorize the Quran, died. Doesn't this prove that there were only few who actually knew the Quran? Doesn't this also prove that there was a real crisis with the Quran? Doesn't this moreover prove that the memorization wasn't good enough to preserve the Quran as Muslims claim today? So again, this is as claimed by the Muslim tradition that a lot of people died, but only 70 Hafiz, those who were in the front lines, only those people died. So why there is so much chaos regarding the Quran, and it was written down because he himself was not sure that whether by memory the Quran will remain in preserved form or not. Compilation question number 4, regarding the second compilation in the time of Uthman, and question is, how could there be a diacritical difference in the 7th century? Now you might have heard that Uthman burned all the other manuscripts and he just came up with one. Okay, but the point is, the history tells us and archaeology tells us, by the research we can know today, that these differences in the manuscripts could have come in 8th and 9th century AD, not in the 7th century or 8th century. Why? So what was the thing he burnt, and why did he burn when you don't have a diacritical markings and vowelizations in that century? What he burnt actually? How you can have a diacritical? How you can have different manuscripts if you don't have diacritical markings? In Arabic, you just put one letter and you put one dot or two dot above it or three dot above it, and below it the meaning will certainly change. So this was not there, this facility was not there in 7th century or 6th century. So on what basis he burned the manuscripts? On what basis he finalized it actually? Another question regarding this Uthmanic recension is, why did Uthman burn all the other copies? Again, what I said, you can only burn the books but not a recitation or someone's tongue. Doesn't that suggest that the Mushabs didn't agree? Wouldn't be great to have them to compare it with today? Now Muslims, when you ask this question to them, they will say that no, that is only a different recitations, or you can say a different pronunciation. But the problem is there is a difference between language and script. Language is something which you can speak, and script is something which you can write that language in. For example, I'm speaking English right now. That is a language. But when I have to write it, I can either write in Devanagari, in a Hindi, whatever I'm speaking. As in the case of Roman Urdu, you people read Urdu in English, in Roman script. Okay, so English, when I am speaking in English, I am speaking a language. But when I write English, I would need a script, and that will be a Roman script. Hope I'm clear on this. So you can why he was burning that? You cannot burn the dialect. because it will remain as a language. You can only burn script, something which is different, because readings will always be there in language, but script will be there. And on what basis a script was if there were not diacritical marks, how it can be possible? Okay, Muslims claim that they were burnt because of different dialects. As I mentioned just now, that they will say that people had different dialects, and Uthman wanted to make that only in one Qurayshi dialect. That is why he burnt all the other ones. But later on, we'll see the just opposite of that. How could Muhammad have known these northern dialect? There were some dialects also from the northern side. We know that of 30 later qirats, 22 came up from the north and 12 from the Kufa. And how can there be 12 different dialects in one small town? Now, after Uthmanic ascension, over the centuries, you had other qirats as well. Now, what is qirat? Now, there is a centuries old debate regarding the qirats and the aharufs of the Quran. Now, what is that? Honestly speaking, if you ask any Muslim, he will not be able to answer it. It is really difficult to answer it because they themselves are not comfortable to give it. But in my view, if you ask me personally, qiraat means reading, something which is a speaking, which is equivalent to speaking, a language, a pronunciation. And aharuf is something which you write that in a script. Okay, so what they will say that there was certain different dialects or qirats or readings, but you cannot burn qirats. You can burn mushafs or arufs in those mushafs. And we have 30 later dialects emerging down the centuries, and 22 of those 30 came from the northern side of Makkah. And even in those 22 different dialects, 12 of them came from Kufa, modern day Iraq, in a town there. Now, how can you have a one small town and you have 12 different dialects or 12 different dialectical people living in that small area? It's not possible. Show me a village in India, anywhere in the world, I challenge, you will not find that. Okay, these are tough questions for Muslims to answer it. Okay, again, second compilation of the Quran. The fact that Zayd and Thabit came up with Surah 33 verse 23 with one man, Huzayma ibn Thabit al-Ansari, proves that the Quran wasn't even complete in 632 AD. So during the time of first compilation of the Quran, when he was collecting Zayd ibn Thabit, when he was collecting the Quran, he found this verse with only one man. So even in that time, the Quran was not complete. So how you can say that it was complete in the time of Uthman? Could there have been many other surahs, as we have just looked at? What about the material which was lost with those killed at the Battle of Yamama in 632? Because, as I mentioned some moments ago, that there were some verses which earlier Muslim scholars believe that they disappeared from the modern day Quran. Let none of you say that you have memorized, whereas you have lost much of it. So, how it is possible? How you can believe that you have the complete Quran? If there was a second Quran, in 652 AD, why now many different Arabic Qurans? Now, this is the area which I think which you people need to understand. Today, even Christians think that Muslims have one Quran, but even today don't know about this, that they have more than 34 different Arabic Qurans. And this is something which we have, our friends and scholars and teachers are coming up with this. Now, if 5 to 9 copies were made for each provinces of Basra, Baghdad, Cairo, Damascus, and so on, where are these codices? Where are these codices? We don't find even one Ottomanic manuscript. We don't find any manuscript from the time of Uthman. Out of 6 major manuscripts, what we have today, we'll look in a few moments about that. We don't even have one Ottomanic manuscript of that time out of 6. And we know that during the time of Jesus, after for 200 years, Christianity was a persecuted religion. Even then, we have got so many manuscripts, church quotations, codices, and so on. Dead Sea Scrolls, more than 25,000 we have with the church quotations, and with the manuscripts we have more than 25,000 manuscripts of the New Testament. So when Islam was from Spain to India, it was all over there. It was first the rightly guided Caliph of the Rashidun period. It remained till 661 AD, and after that you have got Umayyads, and after that you have got from 750 to 850 you have got the Abbasids. You had 200 or 250 years after Islam. You have after Muhammad you have got Islam. So you had your own government, you had your own provinces, you have got your own ruling. Why don't you come up? Why didn't you have preserved according to the traditions these manuscripts? Where are they? We don't even have one. Still you have claimed that we have same Quran from the time of Muhammad or the time of Uthman. Now if you just look the 7th century Qurans according to the tradition which I have just mentioned, some of the traditions which I have just mentioned, that 5 copies, or some of them say that 9 copies, but for the argument's sake, let's keep to the 5 copies sent to 5 cities. Which are the cities? Medina, Makkah, Basra, Kufa, it's in Iraq, and Damascus, which is in Syria. These are the 5 provinces in which the complete codex of the Quran of the Uthmanic recension was sent. Okay, and it was in Qurayshi dialect. Okay, so Ubay ibn Ka'b's surah, according to the traditions, we had 116 surahs. Ibn Masud surah, according to the traditions, had 110 surahs. So Ibn Musa, it had 114, and Zayd ibn Thabit had 114 surahs. Now there were at least 5 Qurans in the 7th century from Medina, Makkah, Basra, Kufa, and Damascus, but we don't even have one of them today. Where are these 5 copies? I want to ask my Muslim friends regarding this. But something then happens between 7th century to 8th century. The Qiraat begin to be introduced. So we don't find these 5 manuscripts over there. But after these 7 or 5 copies, after these 5 or 9 copies, we find in 8th and 9th centuries that Qiraats are coming, and because of the Qiraats, many different versions of the Qurans are coming. Now Muslims love saying that you have got so many different versions. By version they mean that you have different Bibles. You have different Bible, you have different Bible, you have different Bible, which is absolutely a wrong thinking. But what about Qiraat? Okay, actually this is the different versions of the Quran. Okay, so we know that when Muhammad died in 632 AD, Quran was 1, okay, according to the tradition, and Jibreel allowed Muhammad that you can recite this Quran in 7 different dialects or 7 different Qiraats or aharufs, many Muslims like to claim. But then it means that you have got 7 different Qurans, means 7 different readings, because Jibreel allowed it, so that Allah allowed it. Muhammad died in 632 AD, and then again it was changed to 1 in 652 AD in the Qurayshi dialect. When Allah revealed it in 7 different dialects, why Uthman just kept it in just one dialect, Qurayshi dialect? And remember, I have said about the diacritical marks which came in 8th or 9th centuries. Remember that in mind. But for the argument's sake, I am saying that. Okay. Now, so where did we get the 30 qirats Quran come from? Why it has become such an issue? So if you now, first of all, if you think there is one Quran, you are absolutely wrong. There are more than 30 Qurans. I have said more than 34 different versions of the Quran. And when I say versions of the Quran, I don't mean different translations of the Quran. I mean different Arabics, different Arabic of Quran. I'll give you some examples also of it. And it came later on. Now we'll see now the 30 diacritical variants. Now 30 we will not be able to see that, but we'll see the corrections. Okay. Now what are exactly the Qirat? If you see the historical view of the Qirat, where the Qirat came, the different readings of the Quran. The Arabic word which is used in the Quran today does not come from the Hijaz. The Arabic which is used in Quran does not come to the Hijaz, means Makkah and Medina. Arabi, whatever has been used in the Quran, does not matches with the Arabic of the Hijaz, to Makkah and Medina, but further from Nabatea. Remember, I just made video regarding this, that it came from the Nabatea. The Arabic which Quran uses in the book comes from the Nabatean Arabic. Today's current Arabic has 28 letters. The 7th century Nabatean Arabic had only 16 consonantal letters in Razm. So today, when you read, you start reading the Arabic, you have got 28 different letters. But the Nabatean Arabic, in which Quran was written down, it only had 16 consonantal letters. Obviously, this caused a problem in understanding what was written down. Okay. A single consonantal letter could be pronounced in 5 to 8 different ways depending on where you put the dots and vowels. Thus, in the 8th century, dots or vowels were added to the script to help Muslims read the text. So, as I mentioned earlier, that it's in Arabic, if you just, for example, if you have a one simile, if you put some dots above or below, you can pronounce the same word alphabet with different pronunciation, that will cause different meanings. So to accommodate the readers of the Quran, I think, as the research indicates, that later on, much later on, this was introduced. Okay. Now you'll see near about 28 Arabic letters today what we have in Arabic. Like, out of those, 6 are very unique, because you don't need diacritical marking in them. For example, Alif, Ba, Ha, Noon, Mim, Lam and Kaf doesn't require diacritical marking out of 28, but 22 letters you do need to have diacritical markings. Okay. So if you make a smiley and you make one dot above it, above the smiley, you will pronounce that as na. If you put 2 dots above it, it will be pronounced as ta. If you put another dot, 3 dots, that will be pronounced as tha. If you put 1 dot below it, it will be like ba. If you put 2 dots below it, it will be ya. So same letter, but can be pronounced in different ways by putting dots above and below, as I've mentioned. Now you have also got vowels. 3 kind of vowels we need: the dama, the kasra, the fatta, the u, a and e sound. Okay. Now I will come to the 30 official readers and transmitters of the Hafs versus the Hafs. Now I have already mentioned that today what the Muslims read today all over India and the world, apart from Africa and some other parts of the world, you have this popular version of the Quran known as the Hafs Quran. Now, but in 7th to 8th century, you had other readers of the Quran, other seven different versions of the Quran before it came to be finalized at the 30. The first one is the Nafi al-Madni. He lived in Medina in 689 to 785. So he has his own Quran in Arabic. Then you have got Ibn Kathir al-Makki, who lived in Mecca. And his timeline is 666 to 738 AD. You've got Abu Umar ibn al-Ala, who lived in Basra, and his time is 690 to 770 AD. Then you've got Ibn Amir ad-Dimashi. His timeline is, he lived in Damascus, and his timeline is 736 AD. Then you've got Asim ibn Abi al-Najud, who lived in Kufa, and his timeline is 700 to 745 AD. And then you've got Hamza az-Zaliyat, who lived in Kufa, timeline 696 to 772 AD. And the seventh one is Al-Kisai, who lived in Kufa, timeline is 737 to 805 AD. So these are the earliest seven different teachers, you can say, who because Quran was there in the memorization, and further they started writing it down, their own Quran. Now these seven were chosen by Ibn Mujahid, who lived in 936. There might be other also, but these seven were chosen out of those in AD 936. Okay. Now again, this Nafi, Ibn Kathir, Abu, Ibn Umair, Asim, Hamza, Al-Kisa, they were the readers, but they also had their disciples. So whatever they learned, they had their disciples who transmitted their readings. So when you receive something, you make your own also, so it get differences. So Nafi's Quran, Nafi had also two transmitters, or the students, Kaluns and Warsh. Warsh is the modern day African Quran. Kalun lived in 835 AD, Warsh lived in 812 AD. So Ibn Kathir's, you can say, students were Al-Bazi, who lived in 864, Kunbul 904 AD. Abu Amr ibn Allah had two disciples, Al-Duri and Al-Susi, again same timeline. Ibn Amir al-Damashi also had two transmitters, or the students, Hisham and Ibn Dakwan. And fifth is Asim ibn Abi al-Najud, had also two different transmitters, Shubha and Hafs, what we have today. Okay, Hafs come in 796 AD. Hamza az-Zaliyat had also two transmitters, Khalaf 844 AD and Khalad 835 AD. Al-Kisai also had two transmitters, or students, Al-Liyad 854 AD and Al-Duri 860 AD. Now these two different students, for the transmitters of the readers, means 14. It was chosen by Al-Shatabi in 1194 AD. I will show you this in a moment. So you can see over here, these are the seven chosen by the person in 934, and then each one has his own disciple, two disciples, or transmitters. So they recited and wrote it in their own language. So then you also have had other people, other 9 came. I'm talking about these 30 official recitations of the Quran. 7 earlier one, then you had 2 different transmitters or students for each 7. Then other you have got 9 different types of Quran by different people. Abu Zafar, who lives in Medina, Yaqub, Khalaf, and they also had their own students, Isa ibn Bardan, Ruwas, Ishaq, Ibn Jamuz, Rawaz, Idris. So you can read that over here, 9 chosen by Al-Jazari in 1429 AD. So 9 also added. First it was 7, then 14 came, and then 9 came. So all in all, 30 different versions of the Quran came into being. Okay, and these 9 were chosen in 1429 AD by Al Jazari. Now, out of this, today what we have, the most popular in the world is the Hafs Quran, which was written down by a teacher named Hafs in 796 AD. So this is basically what we have today. It's a Hafs Quran. Out of those 30, remember you have to understand that this comes out of those 30. Okay, now let's now talk about these versions of the Quran or different Arabics. Now, so you can have, I'll give some 2 or 3 examples, let's say 1 or 2 examples that will give you some idea that how these differences are there in these different 34 or 30 Qurans. For example, if you look Surah 3 verse 146, okay, in Hafs Quran, it says this verse, Surah 3 verse 146, and I'm reading it from the translation actually. And how many a prophet fought with whom were many worshippers of the Lord. So this fought in Arabic was written down as, in Hafs Quran was Qatla, and in the Warsh Quran it was written down as Kutila, and the translation is, and how many prophets were killed with whom were many worshippers of the Lord. So significance is that in the Hafs Quran we read that the prophets simply fight, or the prophets in the Warsh Quran were killed actually. So this completely changes the meaning in Arabic as well as in Hindi. Okay, now another one is Surah 46 verse 15. In the Hafs Quran it says, and I'm quoting it, the translation, and we have enjoined on man doing good to his parents. So doing good in Arabic, Ishhanan in the Hafs Quran, but in Al-Duri's Quran it says, and we have enjoyed on man beauty to his parents. So beauty in Arabic in Al-Duri's Quran is written as Hushan. So it is what it is. It is Ishnanan or it is Hushan. Hushnan. So are men supposed to be good or to be beautiful to their parents? Again, completely changing the meanings. So there are many. I'm just cutting it down because it is getting too long for me. Okay, so one of the very prominent scholars in the America, a Muslim scholar, his name is Dr. Yasir Qadi, and in his interview in 2020 he admitted actually this problem of Qiraat and Haruf, the recitations and the different versions of the Quran, the different manuscripts of the Qurans, and he says that Harufs and Qiraats are difficult topic for the scholars, and we should not discuss this in public platforms, because this will unsettle the newly converts people. Whole lot of things. I don't want to go in that. Now, let's talk about the manuscripts of the Quran, what we have today. So, what we have today, Muslims claim that there are 6 major manuscripts which are the evidence of the Quran, of the present day Quran, and they say that this is quite close to Uthmanic recension, and some of one of them, one of the manuscripts they claim that actually goes back to the time of Uthman. We'll see that. So now there are 6 different manuscripts. First is Top Copy and Samarkand. First is Top Copy and second one is Samarkand. So we'll see that. So if you see the Top Copy, it comes from the mid 8th century and it is without dots and vowels. So this is actually a very primitive kind of a manuscript which doesn't have any vowels and dots. Okay, and considered to be one of the best manuscripts of the Quran. it differs with the Quran in 2,270 different various places. So with the Hafs Quran, it differs it in 2,270 different places with the modern day Qurans. This is the variance. It goes completely changes the meaning. It is in the Kufic text. Kufic means Iraqi text, where dots have been added later on. So when you will analyze this manuscript, you will see that with the help of ultraviolet phases and so on, the later techniques, you'll find that the dots were added later on. Now, second one is the Samarkand or the which is in the Uzbekistan Samarkand manuscript here. This is in Uzbekistan, Tashkent. It is also dated in 8th century AD. It only has 53 surahs. Half of the Quran is missing. So this Quran is not complete. It only has 53 surahs, and we know that modern day Quran has near about 114 surahs. So it's not the complete Quran, and it has so many variants. It has so many grammatical mistakes that it differs with the present day Quran. So it has grammatical mistakes. It has been erased with many places. It is considered to be an embarrassment by the Muslims, and considered by Muslim scholars as an immature manuscript. So a lot of scholars believe, who have tested this manuscript, that this has so many errors and grammatical mistakes that this was not the original manuscript from the time of Uthman. It must be written down by somebody who was not trained. Okay, another one is the Mile, which is in London, England, and the Petropolonis manuscript, which is in Paris, France. You can see that. Okay, let's talk about Mile. So Mile is dated back from 8th century AD, and it is a bit slanted script, and it goes up to 43 surahs. So it is also not complete, and it also has full of various variants with the modern day Hafs Quran. When I say variant, means it differs in many places with the present day Hafs Quran. So we can also say that this is not from the time of Uthman. Fourth one is the Petropolonis manuscript, which is in Paris, France. It is goes up to 19% of the present day Quran. Okay, and it has 93 manuscripts variants, and dates back to 727 AD. So this is also not the one which goes back to the time of Uthman, and because Uthman compiled it in 652 AD, and it is not coming to the point where we can say that it is perfect. It has so many grammatical, manuscript variants. Another one is Al-Huzayni is in Cairo, Egypt. So this manuscript, actually, it's a monumental text from 9th century AD. It has coverings from tapings, 100 places. They have censored and sanitized the text to make it correspond to the Hafs text today. So you can see the Al-Huzayni text over here. They have tapings over here. So they have erased. They have tried to sanitize to look like more Hafs version of the Quran, but modern day research has made it clear that it has tapings and erasers into that. So even that is not the Uthmanic recension of the manuscript. Okay, and dates back to 705 AD. Now another one is the Sana, Yemen. It is Sana, which is in Yemen. You can see that this one. Okay, this one. So this one is it was discovered in 1975 AD actually, and it has two different scripts between right page and the left page. So right page has different script, and the left page has different script. and between these two pages there is a gap of minimum 60 years. So scholars think that this manuscript was not written in one period, because the scripts which we find from right page and the left page are completely different scripts, and there must be a period of 60 to 70 years between these two different scripts of the Sana manuscripts. It is also considered to be the oldest manuscript of the Quran, and it goes back to 705 AD. Okay, now Gerald Punin is one of the most prominent person who worked on these manuscript, and he has authority over it. It has the 1,000 different variants between Sana text and the present day Hafs text. So you have got thousands of different variants between the modern day Hafs Quran and the Sana manuscripts. Now, underneath this text, there is another text. I have, as I mentioned it, that you will see a lot of tapings and coverings and highlighted and erasers over this manuscripts. Whoever was writing it was not knowing the fact that in the future time the technology will be that much improved that you can actually go into the text and you can read it, what was there. So with the modern technology we can do that. So they are now able to separate the lower text with the upper text. Lower text means which was written down earlier, but then it was erased and something due to, it was taping was applied into that, and it was written in some other form or a shape. Okay, so it does not correspond with the lower text. What was written after that was not corresponding with the lower text. Okay, now there are at least 60 to 70 different differences between these two layers of text. Lower means there are 70 to 80 places where the lower text does not correspond or matches with the upper text. Okay, so and they have got absolutely a different datings. So these were the different 6 major manuscripts of the Quran. Not even one is corresponding to the Hafs text today what we have. They don't have any manuscript of that time. Now remember, Uthman sent to 5 or 9 different provinces, and Muslims were ruling at that time. Even today we Christians have the manuscripts, even though Christianity was the first 2 centuries. Christianity was a persecuted religion. Now, what are the findings of these things, of these 6 different manuscripts of the Quran? None of them are from the 7th century. What we have just mentioned. Out of these, Mail or Topkapi or Hosseini or Sana or so on, none of them goes back to 7th century, means 652 AD. None of them are complete. None of them completely agree with each other. None of them completely agree with the modern day 1924 Hafs Quran. I will just come to that in a moment. There are more than 100 or 1,000 textual differences between these manuscripts. So where is the complete Quran? We are finding that. Okay. Now in BBC we got the news in I think in 2011, in 22nd July, that there was a person named David Thomas, and he used a technique called RC14, and he said that he basically 2 new fragments of Quran were found, and they were named as Birmingham folios, and this was considered to be the oldest Quran fragments found in Birmingham. In a library it was found. So David Thomas said that the writer of this manuscript could well have known the Prophet Muhammad. He would have seen him probably. He would maybe have heard him preach. He may have known him personally, and that really is quite a thought to conjure. You can see the David Thomas and the BBC announcement of the Birmingham folios, and suddenly the whole of the Muslim population became excited, because finally they found something which goes to the time of Prophet Muhammad. So, but let's see. So, but when dating was done on these folios, they found it between 568 AD to 645 AD. Now that is quite problematic, because you can understand that actually it predates Muhammad. Muhammad was born on 570 AD, and he started receiving revelation from 610. So actually this is not a good news for Muslims, this is a bad news for the Muslims, because it actually predates the birth of Muhammad. So this means, as we were analyzing the historical anachronisms and the source criticism, we found that material was taken from somewhere else. So this actually this Birmingham folio actually corresponds with that thing. Only 33 verses in the Quran out of 6,236 verses in the Quran. So these two folios only had 33 verses in them. So, and what are the stories and what might be taken from this? They mentioned Surah 18 verse 17 to 31, and it talks about the 7 sleepers of Ephesus. This is a story, and we can find the evidence of this in 512 AD by the document called Syrian Bishop Jacob of Sarok. Actually, this story was taken from there, because it was written down previously before Quran mentions it, and these two folios had it. Again, Surah 19 verse 19 to 98 talks about the proto-evangelium of James. Okay, so sorry, Surah 19 verse 19 to 98 talks about a story. Actually, it was written down much earlier, and the source of it is proto-evangelium of James, who lived in 145 AD, and the pseudo-gospel of Thomas, which was written in 600 AD, something like that. So must be taken from there also. And remember, these stories might have been circulated, these wrong stories also have been circulated to many places. Now Surah 20 verse 1 to 40, the story of Moses was also there. So all of the material which we find in these two Birmingham folios actually mentions few things which existed even before the time of Prophet Muhammad. Okay, so this is actually you can say a problematic thing for the Muslims. Now, what are the conclusions? The ink has not been dated. So the ink was not dated. Only the manuscript was dated. So they found it to be 568 to 645 AD. Only tell us when the animal died. If the dates are correct, then the classical account is wrong. So if dates are correct, means if we take these dates on a face value, this will mean that the classical account, what we read about Muhammad receiving revelations, what we read about the first recension of Quran, second recension of Quran, that would be proven false. But because how we can have something before time? All the three stories which I've just mentioned it, hundreds to thousands years earlier, thus before Islam. So all the stories come much before Islam. So this will prove again them false. Okay, now I'll just move on because it's too much. Now, if you see the biblical manuscripts of the New Testaments, we have got Codex Vaticanus, that goes back to 300 to 325 AD. We have got Codex Sinaiticus 330 to 360 AD. We have got Codex Alexandrinus, which goes back to 440 AD. Now remember, even at that time when you had Christianity being persecuted, we find these complete manuscripts. Even if you don't want to believe in manuscripts, you have got church quotations. So many things, so many even. I can talk on and on and on about these manuscripts, about the traditions, about the church fathers. So this is something which is not being created in an isolation. Basically, Jesus Christ was an historical person. That's a historical reality. So if you have a historical reality, you have got a lot of people might be talking about you, writing about you, and this is what we see about Jesus in the Bible. But we don't find that in all these three sessions. We have seen contrary things for Islam. Now, this I will end up with this because I'm just exhausted with this speaking too much. My throat is now started breaking now. 1924 Huff's canonized text. What we have today is this Huff's text. You might be thinking that this is 1400 years ago was created, but actually this is just 99 years or 100 years ago. You can date this back. So 1924 Cairo edition text. Sorry. In 1924, it is interesting to tell the story about this version, which came in 1924. This is basically Huff's text. In 1924, the Department of Education in the city of Cairo, Egypt, were having problems with the standardized text because students were quoting Quran and memorizing verses from different versions of the Quran. So this problem was brought before the university, the Al-Azhar University in Egypt, Cairo. Ali Al-Hassani Al-Haddad chose just one out of the 30 official Qurans for their school. So in that time, this man called Al-Haddad chose Hafs Quran out of this 30. And when it was chosen, it was in 1924 Cairo, Al-Azhar University. He chose 1796 AD's Hafs Quran for all high schools, but just in Cairo. All the other 29 variants of the Quran, they gathered together and threw them into the Nile River and sang them, thinking that would get rid of them. Little did they know that you can still buy them, all of them, even today. So even today you can buy these different Qurans, even though they just put that in the Nile River and thought that people will forget about it. But even today you can find these traditions because there are different people in different countries who still use different Qurans. But this is a fact which we don't understand because it has not been popularized by people today. Even I think common Muslims need not to be blamed because they are not told by their imams about these things. Okay. So if you pick all these 29 different Qurans and keep them aside with the Hafs, modern day, this Hafs Quran, you will find 93,263 different variants between them. Now Quran is just having 6,000 something verses, and there are, if you compare these different texts, you have got 93,263 different textual variants. Okay. In 1936 Egypt, okay, the government of Egypt realized how efficient the Cairene model was because till now it was only kept in Cairo, in Egypt. But when the government saw that in 1936 that this model of having just one Quran is actually benefiting the students, so they adopted this Cairene model. They decided to make the Hafs standard for all Qurans in Egyptian schools. So earlier it was in 1924, Hafs Quran was only there for in schools in the Cairo. Now the Egyptian government is thinking to make this all over Egypt. This Hafs Quran essential for all over the Egyptian schools. This was known as the Farouk edition, named after King Farouk, who became to power that year. So in Egypt there was a king who came, King Farouk, and because in his time it was done, so this edition, the Cairene text, was named after him, as known as the Farouk edition. Okay, so in 1985, means some 38 to 40 years ago, the government of Saudi Arabia realized how efficient the Egyptian model was. So they decided to make the Hafs standard for all Qurans worldwide. So you can see that just 40 years ago, actually, this Cairene model or the Hafs Quran was standardized for all the world. and this was known as the Fahad edition. Okay, and this was known as earlier when in Egypt it was done in, for all the Egyptian models or for all the Egyptian school, it was known as Farouk edition. But when in Saudi Arabia in 1985, when uh, King Fahad standardized for all Muslim world in 1982, in 1985, basically he named this edition on his name, and that edition was known as the Fahad edition, this Hafs Quran. So I think many things are still need to be preached and talk about, but I think I'm completely done and my throat is now coming to an extent. But thank you very much. I think I've tried my best to clear out in this series of 3 videos, and this is because I wanted to complete this in just one sitting. That is why today I think it's a 2 hours long video. But in the end, let's just recapitulate before closing it. I think in these 3 videos we have asked 3 basic questions about 3 basic traditions of the Muslims and the Islam. That is, was there a place called Mecca actually from where this thing started? And we saw different arguments, the trade route theory, the Qiblas, the the Quranic geography, so on. And then we looked at the arguments about Muhammad, about his historicity, whether he actually lived in that area, or who was the one who created this identity actually. And we came to realize that it might be the Abbasids who came into power in 750 AD after Umayyads declined, and might be them who wanted to have a identity for themselves. And so that's why, because Jews had book, the Christians had book. Jews had the prophet, the Christians had the prophet. So these people wanted to make their name great, and for them they also wanted to have a identity for themselves. So they came with this option. So we also looked at the Nabatean practices of pre-Muhammadan times, about kissing the black stone, circumambulating it. We also saw the Marwan and Safan, and the historical settings of that time, and came to conclusion that this could not be started by one man named Muhammad, as mentioned by the Quran. Again, in this video we have looked at the third most populated argument, that Muslims always make this claim that Quran has never been changed. It is unchanged, uncreated word of God. We have gone to what the modern writers or the scholars have to say about this claim, and then we go what the Quran has to say about itself. Then we compared it with the earliest of the traditions and the scholars. Then we went to the historical anachronisms, the source criticism, so on and on. We looked at the different variants in between the manuscripts, the consonantal and dialects, the aharuf or the kirats, the issues of aruf and kirat. And then we looked different manuscripts of the Quran, in the modern day Quran, the Uthmanic text. We have compared it with that time. We found that they don't even have one manuscript or one Quran that goes back to the time of Uthman. So all in all, it's a big blow to Islam. I think if you just watch these videos carefully, I think you'll get hell out of information out of it. You can use that by the grace of God. But as I said, that knowledge is to glorify God. It is not for us to put down other people. Use it wisely. And my prayer And request to you is that you just grow in the Lord, be humble, grow more and more in the Lord, use this wisely, not to let down others, but to to uphold others in your prayers and by your behavior. And I will meet you again with new series. I have so many things in my mind, and definitely I'm going to come. But Islam is something which really exhausted me. But I have other topics as well related to Hinduisms and science and so on and on and on, biblical teachings as well. I'll definitely try my best to come up with some more beautiful topics. Thank you. God bless you all.